Hey everybody, welcome to Bento Radio. My name is Alex, I'm your host, and if you are just watching this episode in particular, I have great news and I have odd news for you. First off, the odd news is that this won't be a normal episode. If you want a more normal episode, you can go listen to last week's episode all about Genshiken, which is already up here or wherever you're listening to this. It's also up in the form of a post over on my new site called Bento Box, that I'm calling Bento Box. And Bento Box is a site I started with Ghost, which means that at some point if I want to do a newsletter type thing, I can. But for the long and short of it is basically I have a place where everything I'm doing gets to live and have one place for you to go instead of multiple. You can find this by looking in the description of any episode you're listening to. If you're listening to me on a podcast platform, you can also subscribe to me on that podcast platform. You can also subscribe to me on YouTube if you're watching this right now. If you want to watch this instead of listening to it, or vice versa, you can go to YouTube or go to your podcast platform of choice and find me there. The podcast is Bento Radio. The site, once again, is bento-box.ghost.io. So definitely go check that out. I've got a bunch of fun stuff up there, including daily write-ups of what I'm going to be talking about today. So like I said, today is not going to be a quote-unquote normal episode, but it's going to be more of an episode talking about where I just was for 4 days not just last weekend, but last Thursday to last Sunday, and that is Anime NYC 2025. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, as you may have noticed, the background to the video in the opening was not normal. It wasn't what you expect, and the background that you're probably seeing cycle now is a collection of photos I took at Anime NYC this year, just to give you an idea of the vibes, the cosplayers, all of it. And I'll keep that going for the entirety of the video, most likely. If I have to loop it, I will, but I don't think I'll need to, all said. But, so, just a little bit of background here. I have been going to Anime NYC consistently since 2019. I have been going to cons for a lot longer, but more off and on. But consistently since 2019, I skipped the COVID years because I skipped the COVID years, and that was a good idea because at the time, the only outbreaks of COVID what ended up being at Anime NYC. I don't remember if it was in 2020 or 2021, but I think it was in 2021. But I've gone every year other than the COVID years since 2019. And I have a wall of badges to show for it, actually. I have a badge wall of all my passes. And for the past 2 years, I have gone as press because I found myself talking about the convention anyway because I am the kind of otaku who's really interested in the culture and the fandom. And I think that conventions, whether it be something like Anime NYC, whether it be something like Otakon, Momocon, name your American con, name Comiket certainly, are all the rare communal expressions of something that has become pretty online lately, which is anime fandom. We are meme lords, we are all over TikTok and Instagram and all of it. But conventions, not just for anime fans or specifically otaku, but for fans of any type of thing. I know there's a Brandon Sanderson convention. There's Comic-Con. There's all of this stuff. There are ways for people to bring their fandom into the physical world in a real way, whether that be cosplay, whether that be the purchasing of goods, whether that be any of it. But there are also ways for you to be next to other people like you. And that's just really valuable and important. And I said as much in my second day write-up of the reason you should go to a convention is because if you love not even just anime, but a thing, you should put yourself around other people every once in a while who love that thing too. It's fulfilling. It lets you know that you're not the weirdo and all of that other stuff. It also lets you feel empowered and authoritative in a way that lots of people who go to anime cons or comic book conventions don't necessarily get out of their everyday life. And what it looks like to go as press is essentially my badge is comped and I get access to the press room. Those are the only two guaranteed things about being press. And in exchange for those two guaranteed things, meaning your badge is comped and you get access to the press room, you cover the convention. And in past years, I've done literally daily podcasts about my time at Anime NYC. Those have always done really well. I stopped that last year because I had a massive malfunction in my on-the-go travel recording setup that everything just went wrong, and I had to condense it down to a singular episode. So that's what I'm doing this year too. But in addition to that, you can go over to Bento Box, my kind of blog website thing, what have you. And well, I can decently say my blog, and you can see all 4 of my daily write-ups about Anime NYC and what I saw there, what I did there, all that fun stuff. But the long and short of it is I got invited as I apply. I'm sure there are members of the press who are invited, but I apply every year. And every year that you apply and every year you get approved, that strengthens your chances for next year because you're considered to be in a pool of people who cover the show. And you get an email at the end of, hey, mark your calendars for this time next year. We hope you can join us again, kind of thing. And they encourage us as members of the press to submit our coverage to them. And they actually, I saw the email. The email actually showed up in my inbox today. It means it probably went out this morning with tracks because the last day was Sunday and Monday is the buffer day. Get your head screwed on straight and travel, and then you put out the final emails kind of thing. But they sent out an email giving you details on attendance, which I'll cover in a second, but also encouraging you to submit your coverage because they put that all in a final report that then goes to the people who are organizing the convention so they can improve things. And that's really valuable to them, but it also lets us know that even somebody like me who is generally doing just general con write-ups, I like to wander the con floor, I like to go to panels, I like to take pictures of cosplayers, talk to random people, see how their convention is going, and all that stuff is just as valuable as, in its own way, as getting the big interviews and all that stuff, which I did get some of. We all sat in the Netflix thing at the beginning of the convention, on the first day of the convention, and I tend to write about different things than, say, a larger outfit like Anime News Network would write about, or even a not as large, but certainly larger than just me, outfit like Anime Herald would write about, because I am another member of the press, but I am a one-man band. I'm doing this myself out of my own interest. It's not my day job, so I can cover and pick and choose what I want to cover at my leisure. And I can apply. You have to request interviews. I can request interviews or not, and all that stuff. And as a result of me being press, I actually have a couple things in the hopper that will be coming up that I'm really interested in showing you guys when that stuff happens. So keep an eye out for that stuff when it does happen. But I want to talk about something very specific here, because this happens every year in terms of these conventions, and that is you have a convention that happens, and then about a day or two later, you start getting the videos from that convention on short video platforms. I didn't really post much to Instagram or to Instagram Reels or TikTok while I was at the convention. I may throw a slideshow together, and I'm certainly posting this now, but it takes a couple days because it's a live thing, and it's a live thing that's incredibly well attended. According to, and this is probably out there by now, according to the official attendance numbers, the final attendance tally for Anime NYC, all attendance, I think, was 140,000. To give you a kind of understanding of how big that is, Otakon, I believe, I just listened to the most recent Anime World Order podcast where they talked about Otakon, of, at least to me, really well-known anime convention that used to be out of Boston and now out of DC, was its attendance numbers were, I think it was 40,000. So the Anime NYC is a huge East Coast convention on the same magnitude as something like AX. AX is getting hundreds of thousands of people. Is getting over 100,000 people, I believe. So is Anime NYC, and people show up to this thing. People show up and show out to Anime NYC. That said, the further, and take my opinions of the convention with a grain of salt. I want to encourage you to do that, because a thing that occurred to me this year was your level of attendance to conventions affect how you see the convention. For me, I have a calm place to hang out, a reliable source of water. I have a free badge that gets me into the convention. Not like I'm not full staff, I'm not running the thing, but I have a level of privilege and access that you don't, aka the everyday attendant. If you've got a normal Saturday badge, or even if you've got a 4-day badge, or even if you have a Anime NYC Plus badge, I have a different level of access because I am press, and like that's part of it. The reason I know the official numbers for attendance is because on the very last day, the head of the press room walked in with little whiteboards and stuck them on a table, and they said, and here's some fun facts about the convention, and one of them was 140, I think it was 140 people showed up, and that's 46,000 than the previous year. And that kind of access isn't much, but it still creates a separating effect for me from your everyday attendant, because I can walk around and I have access in a way that isn't carte blanche. Certainly, I'm not a staff member, and when you are pressed for these events, they tell you your press badge does not guarantee you access into anything. It did not guarantee you access to guests. You have to apply for all those interviews and the whole process. But I'm still different from your everyday attendant. And I'm sure you can figure out a scale where I sit compared to whoever's running the convention and the person who gets the Thursday badge for the first 4 hours of the con. And with that said, I want to talk about the first day. And at least for me, as a member of the press and as a long-time con-goer and hardcore otaku, there wasn't a whole lot to do for the first day. And I think that was because of the new quote-unquote 4-day format. The first day was the setup day, and it was a little intended to be the setup day, but wasn't treated like that from what I understand in the dealer room. It was supposed to be stuff that was held back from sale in the dealer room, from what I've heard, that from actual other attendants, that wasn't. And so when the first full day, which was Friday, rolled around, there was stuff that was sold out already. It was stuff that people couldn't get anymore, and they were supposed to be able to. And there's going to be a whole bunch of complaints that you'll hear about Anime NYC. A lot of it is about air conditioning. I heard something about air conditioning. I heard something about food prices. And that's stuff that is not necessarily fully controlled by the people putting the convention on. Because these conventions are essentially large-scale, single-weekend partnerships over time that are built over time between the convention, meaning Anime NYC, the organization that puts on the show, and Crunchyroll, it's generating force, basically, the force that powers all of it. Literally, they put that on the sign. It's on the logo, small and to the right as a bottom. But it's a partnership between them and the location, wherever it's put on. And if you ever wondered why during the pandemic, a lot of places were actually putting out these emergency orders and these states of emergency, part of it was to let people out of their contracts with convention centers. Because the contracts that you make with convention centers can be long, if not longer, from what I understand, as a decade. And the penalties for dropping out of that, for not filling the space when you agreed to, are huge. Many smaller conventions deal with the devil scenario in which they can't survive not putting the convention on somehow. So if you've ever been to a convention that feels ramshackle, it feels bad, that's part of the reason, is that contract is so binding and so detrimental to one side in a way that if they don't fulfill the commitment and put on an event, it's a big deal. It's a big deal and a big problem. What that also means is there's some control you get over things, some control you don't get over things. And some of that can be mitigated, some of that can't. Things like people flows, things like traffic issues in the dealer room can be mitigated to some level. And when I tell you that the change from when I started going, 2019, to now, in terms of just getting bodies in the building, is extraordinary. I remember the first time I went, I was talking to another press person about this. The first time I went to Anime NYC, I don't have a picture of it, or I'd put it up behind me. Or if I do, I don't remember where it is. I got my badge, and I successfully just got a 3-day badge that year. There were other years, including last year, where I had to get 3 one-day badges, and then I subsequently got a press badge, and I was just walking around with 4 badges. But I got my badge and showed up, waited online for at least an hour. And then on the way in, you go snake around the Javits Center sidewalk and down and through like a parking structure almost, like a parking overpass. You go under the building a little bit there. And under there were just 2 giant cardboard bins full of lanyards. This was their solution to getting everybody a lanyard. And it was full mob mentality. It was a full mob mentality, and people were just grabbing them. And there were tons left over. And these things were left unattended. But they were just big cardboard bins. You see in Costco, actually, is exactly it. And that felt real rickety and bad to everyone. Now, what happens when you go into Anime NYC? The lanyards and other promotional stuff are in these very specific, big but not huge containers, and they're not something like people can just push around. They're locked in place. They look official enough where you would feel weird about messing with them. So you walk up, you take what you need, and you go. And in addition to that, the people flow of getting people into the Javits has improved massively. I think the first time, if you haven't been to Anime NYC, once you get a badge, you go on a list. I'm sure there's a bunch of lists. There's like a list for every kind of badge you can have. But one of the emails that everybody gets every time is the Know Your Entry and Exit Plan email. And it gives you a map of where you enter based on what badge you have. So you always know where you can go in. And it's like a color line for will call. There's a color line for you already have a badge. There's a color line for NYC Plus, for Anime NYC Plus. There's a color line for ADA. And it's well thought out. It's a solution to that problem that has worked since and will continue to work. That's not the problem that people are talking about if you hear any videos about traffic problems. At least not in my estimation, because everybody gets in pretty quickly. It's not a problem anymore. That's not to say there aren't some little odd moments still. For example, this was the first year there was a Thursday to the convention. And they could have put the Thursday buttons in one of those aforementioned special bins, but instead they set up 2 big card tables and just left them out and had people have at them. That's a little odd. I got one, no problem. It's one sitting on the bag that I wear to all my conventions, which is a medium-sized red camera bag that's got a bunch of compartments. It's super useful, actually. But my point is that a lot of the urban myths that come out of any convention that are certainly coming out of this one, including an insane one that involves a Squirrel Girl cosplayer, which is nuts to me, I just don't encounter because I'm not in that era of my fandom anymore, but B, because I'm actually covering the convention. I'm on the con floor. I might pick stuff up in my wanderings and in my taking pictures, but I'm there for a different reason than you are lots of times. I'm there, especially on this con's last day, Sunday. I spent the entire first half of the day taking a lot of the pictures that you see behind you. So I had enough pictures to work with when I did things like write-ups or this podcast or its partner YouTube video. And I'm just concerned about less. And also, I get in slightly earlier. I would love to get in earlier, even, because last year they let the press in alongside the Anime NYC Plus members, and I got some really incredible. I'll link the Instagram post from 2024 in the entry on Bento box. But I got some really incredible shots of the empty show floor of just people's booths and just people with vibe of stuff that I called off this time, but I didn't. Like, I had to be much more strategic about this time because I was getting in at the 10 o'clock mark with everybody else. And that's fine. That's somebody's choice. I probably could have been like, hey, can I go on the show floor a little early so I can get pictures? But I just didn't ask because I didn't want to rock the boat. But in terms of the first day, in terms of that first half day, because the way it functions this time, I don't know how they're going to do it next time, although they did say in the follow-up email at the end of the con for press, join us for 4 full days. I don't know what that means. I hope that they're planning on the next year it's going to be basically 3 full days and a half day, which is usually, if you go to a 3-day con, the last day is not the stinker, but it's much more low-key than the first 2. But the first day, it didn't really have much to do in terms specifically of panels and activities. Because I think everybody knew the show's not fully here yet. It opened at 4 in the afternoon, which I understand is what lets people get out of work and school and then go. But there were a grand total of panels, of two panels. One of them was the Netflix showcase that they put on at Anime NYC, which you can go check Anime News Network for a lot of that news there. But there wasn't a lot there, and I noticed a ton of attendants who only had Thursday badges. So essentially what people with Thursday badges were getting, at least this time around, doing something on this scale for the first time is always hard. I don't blame anybody for this. I just don't think it ended the way they maybe ideally wanted it to. Because people who had only Thursday badges had very little on offer for that Thursday. I don't even think there were any 18 plus things because I think it closed at 7 or something. And there's also like a programming thing with conventions that happen in that you never want to be the 10 o'clock panel on the first day of a convention. Or in this case, the 4:30 panel on the first day of a convention. Because that asks people to rush and to do your thing first in a way that people tend to not want to when they show up to these conventions. They want to go explore the dealer room and they want to go explore the artist alley and all these other things. It's better if you're in the herd of other panels because eventually people get their fill of the dealer room. They check out what panels there are. If you ever go to a convention, by the way, and they have on offer a scheduling app, always take a look at it, because the Anime NYC scheduling app is actually pretty fantastic. It gives you the full schedule. It lets you know all the guests. The worst thing about it is that it broke up the schedule into 3 different ones. I think I can actually look at it now. But I think there were at least 3 schedules. And these schedules they just took it away from me. Oh no, I can get back to this. The schedules for everything was the normal panel schedule and the gaming schedule, because there's a Play NYC area to Anime NYC now that was part of their expansions. They did they did last year. And then there are the cosplay meetup schedules. And the big thing to do in the first day was probably cosplay meetups. But if you're not cosplaying something from one of those meetups, then that's not something that you would necessarily love. The other thing, and actually, speaking of cosplay, I want to talk about something very specific that I noticed a lot of. There are a couple different classes of cosplayers in my mind. The first class of cosplayers is the Jessica Negris of the world. They are professional cosplayers. This is what they do for a living. They figured out a way to make it their day job. They make their own costumes. They sew their own costumes, the whole thing. There was a great video where Sea-Dog VA, who was actually at the convention with Iron Mouse, playing, I think, a game called Starlight Revolver, which hasn't come out yet. For most days of the convention, from what I saw, but as a promotional thing for that game, I'm sure. But he does these videos out every now and again where he gets these super cheap cosplays off of Wish.com. Actually, I think it's off of Temu at this point. And he just makes a fun video of him dressing up in these dumb, terribly made cosplays. But eventually he sent them to professional cosplayers, reached out to professional cosplayers, and he was like, hey, take these, do something with them, and donate a portion of the proceeds from the video you make to the charity of your choice, and I'll do the same. And Jessica Negri, I think, I forget what cosplay she got, but he was one of the ones who said yes, and she made something incredible out of the most worst costume he probably had. It was great. So there's that level of cosplay. There's the professional, it is their life cosplayer. And then there's the well-known amateur cosplayer. And now there's and that includes hobbyists and people who really commit themselves to the craft of it. I've got a couple great cosplays this year, two of which are photographed daily write-ups I did. The second daily write-up actually features this awesome cosplayer who's dressed as Selfie from Durara as the main image. That was a great one. There's another one with a girl dressed as Hasune Miku in the final write-up. That's an incredible picture. I felt bad that my camera isn't Wi-Fi connected and I couldn't just send it to her because she saw it and she's like, can I have that picture? I'm sorry, I can't. But I'll have to figure out something to deal with that for the next con I go to, because I felt bad I couldn't give her this really good picture. But the last group I'm going to talk about here is also hobbyist cosplayers. They often do a good job with their costumes, but they're going to the cons and they're making TikTok videos. They're making videos for shorts and reels. And at this point, you see these cosplayers everywhere. You also see cosplayers who are rolling in with whole lighting setups and professional photographers, and they're doing these shoots. And you see photographers setting up respectfully in places to do that for cosplayers and build a relationship, kind of Tanaka style from Genshiken, which I talked about in my last episode. But the rampant stop and drop a phone tripod and start dancingness, this is the first year where I really felt it as an attendant, where it's in every corner. It's inescapable. And it's part of what's causing traffic problems, because people pick spaces because of these specific views. And if you've ever noticed somebody taking a picture at these conventions, oftentimes you try to duck under the picture, or you wait for the person to get the picture, take the picture first. And so people feel weird about walking in the backgrounds of people's videos. It's a very individual activity within a very group-oriented setting. And if there was one big note that I would give to the convention throwers somewhere, and the reason why I didn't say this in my first day write-up, because I noticed it, I hadn't fully processed it at that point, but it's figure out a way to give those people absolutely what they want, because they clearly paid the badge price to be there and do this, but not disrupt the rest of the attendance ability to move around. Because I heard from a couple people that it's a problem. They're in every corner. And I will say, I'm not going to name who because I don't know who, but I also don't want to light somebody's hair on fire. I saw a cosplay I want to take a picture. Not with, of. And I approached them really politely. I waited until they were done with their video. I was like, hey, do you mind if I take a picture? And they were not about it. And that's totally, as a cosplayer, that's your prerogative. But there was a, why would I ever want to that? And I just, like, so many cosplayers I saw, it was a communal thing. They wanted to dress up and represent their favorite characters. It wasn't a thing that was for the internet. Yes, the pictures I took of cosplayers and I put on Bento box, people will see them, but it's a labor of love, not of fame. I'm not saying that we shouldn't want fame for putting in effort, but I am saying that that aspect of the convention could be managed better than it was. Very often in things like Comic-Con, you're not allowed to do photo shoots or stuff of that nature on the show floor. You're allowed to do it, but you have to do it outside. And that's why very often in anime, when you see, in Dress Up Darling is a perfect example. When you see Marin cosplaying, I don't think she cosplays inside for the first couple episodes of the first season. It's all outside because that's the designated area and everybody respects that and it's fine. You could do something like set up a area where cosplays could be and do photo shoots and videos and stuff, and they do that they have a whole pavilion with backdrops and stuff. You can actually see in that second day post over on Bento Box, you can see one of those backdrops and a cosplayer being photographed. But they don't drive everybody up there, and I don't think they make effective use of the space. I know a lot of it is the sheer mass of people is hard to manage. But I think you could be giving people more space to move around by situating the people who aren't appropriately, if that makes any sense. And that's probably my biggest complaint with the entire convention is just to get the people interested in shooting TikTok videos to a place where they can do that, but it doesn't disrupt anything. On that note, I want to talk about the second day. And the second day was my panel dungeon day, is the way I end up thinking about it all the time. Very often at these conventions, I just go into panels. I go into screenings, and I go into panels for an entire day. And the hardest part of that, and Mike Toole of Discotheque fame actually said to me when I went back and forth with him about him choosing between the Rooster Fighter premiere and the Detective Conan movie premiere screening that he wanted to go to. I said, I waited online for the Crunchyroll round 2 screenings while staring at a different line for a different screening. And I clearly made my choice. And he said, the thing he said directly is, over on Blue Sky, was, a good convention is full of awful, impossible choices. And he's really right. So there's only so much time in a day, and there's only so much time in the convention center in that day. So they're going to set up hard choices for you. That's another reason why you want to use if the convention offers a scheduling app, because you can not only build your schedule beforehand, but you can on the fly decide, oh, I don't really want to go to that now that I'm like half an hour from it. I'm going to go to this instead. It can make those shifts. You can make those changes. And one of the things I always do in these things, two of the things I always love to do in these Anime NYC or any convention if they're on offer. Actually, I'll touch on three things I would love to do, but we'll start with the two. Is first, I love to go to screenings because you get to see not just the latest stuff, but stuff that isn't out there yet. My first convention was the Big Apple Anime Fest, in the very last one, in 2015? No, that's wrong. It has to be 2000. It was 2005. I had already graduated college by 2015. I'm a dust person. But back in 2005, or whenever, it was probably 2005, 2004 or 5, one of the two. But they had a screening of Tree of Palm there before it was ever released, before any of it. They also put Princess Mononoke on the Coke billboard, and I'm pretty sure that memory is correct. I don't think I'm Mandela affecting myself there, in Times Square, which was wild. This was the era of the anime bubble that led to things like Cool Japan, so that makes a lot of sense. But my point is that there's screenings of stuff that you won't see anywhere else, like the Detective Conan movie. But there's also screenings of things that will come out eventually, but this is your first chance to see them. One of my great gripes with the Japan Society is they keep programming opposite, as if they are in the same convention center, stuff at Anime NYC. So last year, if you wanted to go see Boy and the Heron, which I later saw in theaters normally, you could go see it 3 months ahead if you were, like me, a member of the Japan Society, and you wanted to go across town for essentially the U.S. premiere or U.S. preview screening that they set up. But I'm like, I'm at the Javits Center. I'm not trekking across town for this nonsense. And that also applies to the manga awards and the whole thing. And that's part of the reason why teams like Anime NYC send multiple people to these conventions. And part of the reason why the program like this is because the people at the conventions bringing things like screenings and artist drawings and the manga awards know that it's more convenient for outlets if they do everything around the same time and they can send different people to different things. But as a average goer, it forces you or a one-man band press outlet like me to make some hard choices. And so the first hard choice I made was to go to the 2 screenings. And of the 2 screenings, the first one, the standout, was a show that I had memory wiped from my brain called Hanakimi. Hanakimi is a big-time shoujo manga shoujo reversed harem manga from the early 80s to the mid-90s. And I think this is the first adaptation of it in anime, and it looks great. It's fun as hell. If you like that kind of thing, it's a top tier one of those. But the thing that super stood out is this thing that I looked at the poster for. That looks interesting, but it looks along the lines of a classical isekai fantasy thing, or even just like a high fantasy thing. And it's this show called Sentenced to be a Hero, and it's based off of it's got a source material of a light novel, which I might try and go find, because I've been in light novels lately. But they knocked it out of the park on this thing. It was the thing to see in my estimation, it was the thing to see at the convention. It was incredible, and it's also a 45-minute chunk of a premiere episode. And it keeps you for that full 45 minutes. It rocked. And the next thing I like to go do at some point in these conventions is I like to go watch somebody who does it professionally draw, period. Just draw. And so there is a mangaka who I followed for a long time. And if you aren't following mangaka or you think that's insane, I would point to the mangaka for Food Wars or the mangaka for Air Gear, both of whom were primarily hentai artists before those works. And if you haven't guessed this, hentai artists can be some of the best manga artists working right now. They have nothing to hide behind. They have to have their anatomy nailed to a certain degree. And they gotta kick ass at it. And there's a particular hentai manga artist who I've followed for a long time named, I think his name is Shiwazu no, is Shiwazu no, and he's been doing this, I think, for easily 15 years at least. But he is incredibly talented, and they had an 18 plus panel by J18, and J18 brought him out to the convention, and I actually got a book of his, and I got it signed by him, which I'm super jazzed about, because awesome. But he did a live drawing at the panel, and you get to see a master of the craft do the thing, and it rules. And so that's a big deal. You get to see someone make the thing we all love on some level, whether that be an animator, or whether that be a mangaka, or a arrow mangaka, or even an illustrator. Trigger does this regularly. They do this on their Patreon. You can watch live drawings on Patreon. But the thing about Trigger is, and oftentimes what they'll do is they'll do a live drawing, and then they'll raffle off the drawing at the end. The artist for Shangri-La Frontier actually did that on last year in the Shangri-La Frontier panel. That was really cool. And because they're basically raffling it off, they encourage you to take pictures. You can go see a picture of pretty much the completed drawing from Shiwazu Okina over on Bento Box right now. But so that's the second thing I really like to do. And the third thing is I like to go to industry panels, and I like to go to weird panels. If you've got a weird panel, I'll step in and I'll at least see what's up, because I'm curious. I'm always curious, and I want to see other people's opinions about stuff. I used to put on I'll save that for a little bit later, but I'll go to industry panels of people who I've known through social media for a while. I go to industry panels for companies I have no relation to at all. Lots of times, the smaller the industry panel, the better. It's become a tradition for me to end my convention with going to the Izaki industry panel. And if you don't know anything about Izaki, it's a digital manga platform helmed by two people, one of which is Evan Mento, who I've followed and gone back and forth with a lot on social media. Don't worry, Evan, I will remember to send you that email this time. But that panel, he talked about the special fully translated edition of Young Magazine that you can get right now for free until December 31st of this year. You can get for free on Izaki. You don't even have to make a but if you make an account, you can save it to your library and read it forever. But you have no idea what Young Magazine is. It is the magazine where they originally published Ghost in the Shell, where they originally published a lot of incredible seinen and futuristic seinen works. So definitely go check that out if you any interest in that. I think in my third day panel, in my write up, I actually put a link to Izaki in the over on Bento Box. But it's just a convention you go to, whether it be for a fandom or professional, the panels are meant to be people with some kind of authority in whatever matter they're talking about, giving you information. Anime panels are a little bit different, and I heard some horror stories about the use of ChatGPT in panels. The con this year, which was I heard about them, I was like, really? How did you mess that up that bad? But by and large, there's people approving the panels, and they're looking at the panels and being like, does this person know what they're talking about? He thinks it's worth somebody's time. Tons of people apply for panels. Tons of people get rejected. The best anime influencer you have gotten rejected for a panel once or twice. People who I started listening to when I was a little odeling, Anime World Order, get their panels rejected all the time. I've gotten my panels rejected before. It happens. the people who get approved are bringing something to the table, especially the smaller fan panels. But even the bigger panels that you might not be interested in are worth it a lot of times. So, like, a thing I'm always continually surprised at is every time I go to a voice actor panel, no matter who the voice actor is, I have a good time. It's a good time. And part of that is that you are, when you go to a panel with like a voice actor or with a manga artist doing a live drawing, you're going to see somebody who has, for all intents and purposes, superpowers. Voice actors have superpowers because they embody the characters we all love. Like I went to see a voice actor panel where one of the three was the voice of Marin from My Dress Up Darling, and she did one of the voice lines, and you instantly hear her. You're like, oh, geez. And then last year I went to the Steve Bloom panel. It was his first time at Anime NYC, and so far his only time. But I hope he comes back. But he's been a successful voice actor for so long that he's so practiced that it was really cool to see him. Also, he said, his wife, I love the kind of woman who can kick my ass, which is the infamous line from Knocking on Heaven's Door, which was just a fun thing for him to be able to do. Just like going and seeing those people is incredible. Before I talk about the last thing I want to talk about, I want to take a minute here and talk about the AMV contest. Because I'd never gone to an AMV contest. I'd never gone to one. This was incredible. You haven't paid attention to AMVs, or you not paying attention to AMVs, I encourage you to go pay attention to them. You can actually go watch all the again over on Bento Box site. You can go watch all of the to the AMV contest. Clicking the button, I believe I think it's right up on the second day. It's the same one with the photo from that cosplayer. I took a picture of my ballot. You can go watch all the entries, especially the trailer ones, specifically the trailer, and where they use the audio from the trailer for a ballad from Talladega Nights and footage from Speed Racer sings a work of art. There are other ones, like this one called Fallacy, that's incredibly beautiful and heartrending. They said in the panel, they said in the introduction to what is essentially a screening of all these things, they get like entries a year, which is insane, and they boil it down to, in this case, 27. Form of craft and a dedication to fandom that takes dedication. In order to do what the Mifune Nights, which is a Ricky Bobby Speed Racer one is called. In order to do what the Mifune Nights video does, you need like an encyclopedic understanding of the Speed Race, of all 52 episodes of the Speed Racer TV show. You need to be like episode 16 and pull a thing, go to episode and pull a different thing, and sync them up as perfectly as humanly possible. There's another one called First Measure, and it's done with such a commitment to its own bit that it is to be appreciated on its own terms. So that's that. And so I did talk about going to panels and the importance of going to panels and all that stuff, and I used to be a panelist at Anime, which is a significantly small operation. It was small enough for the last year that I went, but that I think it was in business for me to run 4 panels at that convention. But the biggest panel I ultimately did there was a panel called, and this was before the Vic Mañana of it all, Full Metal and Beyond, an exploration of disabled representation in anime. And when I first did this panel, they put me in the biggest room in the Times Square Marriott, the ballroom at the top of the freaking hotel. It was insane. I was so terrified. I filled that thing up. Every 2/3 of the seat, I filled 2/3 of the seats. The entire thing failed in terms of AV equipment. The mic sucked. The projector didn't work, and I had to theater of the mind the whole thing. I impressed the daylights out of that crowd. the attendance to that panel just kept rising. And if you don't remember me from that panel, you might remember me from, actually, I only did 3 panels by the last year. I never enacted the last panel, which was all about world building and storytelling. But the other panels you might know me from, if you know me from there, is a panel called Mommy and Daddy Hate You, A Guide to Shitty Anime Parents, which was my clickbait panel, which always filled the room. Like, every time I did it, the staff that was assigned to that panel room would just peek in and be like, hey, at a certain point we're going to close the doors because it's like you can't get in, like, you'll fill the room. I'm like, okay, come in. And then the last panel I did, which I only did my last year, was Welcome to Cyberpunk Nightmare, a guide just to your cyberpunk future via anime, which was all about like the of living in a cyberpunk world. And that also got pretty good attendance, but it was probably the lowest attended of the 3 I did. But I am a physically disabled person. The Full Metal and Beyond panel really meant something to me, and like the 2 panels were designed to put butts in seats for that panel, for the Full Metal and Beyond panel. I straight up did the entirety of the Shitty Anime Parents panel because I wanted to say, like, and if you like this one, be sure to come to my other one. And it worked, largely. But inevitably, after every single time I did that panel, somebody of varying ages would come up to me and say, thank you so much for doing this. I wish other people did this too. You know, a lot to me that you did this together. And here's why. Highlights, I remember all of them because they were all like souls and like really. The first one was blind woman in the first row of the first time I put on that panel. And the first guy who came up to me was like, you're really good at this. You should go to sci-fi cons and do this thing. I'm like, okay. But I'm incredibly flattered. But she was incredibly thankful. And interestingly enough, when I got questions, which I would always take questions in this panel, when I inevitably got questions about TOF, because you talk about disability in media and you get questions about TOF now, which is, congratulations to the creators of Avatar. You done it. You did a good thing. That's why that happened. I was like, hey, there's someone who's actually blind here. I could answer, but my answer would be bullshit. Do you want to answer? And she was like, absolutely. And the person who was with her got the microphone and she answered. It was great. This one was, I believe, a young woman with some form of mental disability who was really looking for some sort of representation. And I usually in my panel, I would stick to very often physical disabilities because that's what I could have a level of authority and understanding about. But also, there was generally the physical disabilities in media has very little interpretation. The most interpretation to physical disabilities in anime oftentimes is anytime you see a Monster Girl show, they're talking about different levels of ability and different bodies in a way that's very akin to talking about disability. Legendarily, and I'll talk about it at some point in full, but Monster Musume is a body-positive, anti-ableist show to its core. I'm not kidding. You'll think I'm insane, but if you watch it, you might notice now. But, so, I didn't really have a whole lot of examples for it. I gave her something to go watch, and I was like, go watch this. I think you'll really like it. I think you'll find what you're looking for in it, and I sent her off. The last one was a young girl and her mother, which, like, I'm a sweaty old anime fan. I'm like, weird. But had an auditory processing disorder. That was the year I think that a voice came out and I included it and I talked about it, and she was just so thankful. And her mom was like, you made my kid's freaking universe. Thank you so much. I'm thinking about it. But the last one, the fourth one, came this weekend when I was at the panel for Anime Ego, Justice of World of Crap and more media OCD fame. If you're ever wondering who mastered a disc in the anime industry, There's a strong chance it was Justin Vegas. At the end of his panel, I was kind of loitering. I asked for his card, and I got his card because I wanted it for press purposes. But someone came up to me, and I don't want to out them the same way I don't want to out anybody who's not like publicly out there, and thanked me profusely for doing that panel. And at this point, the last time I did that panel was 2019. So this with them for years. It was awesome. And I'm like, and I told them, like, this is why I did this. This is why I did this, because I knew that there were people who wanted and needed that kind of thing in the anime con-going community. And that's why I wrote the thing about the write-up on the second day I did, was because it reminded me that these conventions are communal events, and that really what rubbed me so the wrong way about the like cosplayer phenomenon this year, about a thing we all love. And it's fine if you want to, cosplay and post a video onto social media, but this is one of the few times when the whole of your social media world has come to you and you've gone to it. Look up, look around. Spending inordinate amount of money on booths. They're putting on screenings. Have showed up. Is covering it for a reason. I'm covering it for a reason. It's monoculture has disappeared, and this is gonna sound weird, but monoculture has disappeared. Pokemon is not being watched by every child across the land anymore. There was a time when it was. Believe you me, I remember it. I'm sure you do too. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're not old enough. Who knows? But strong chance you do. Or you've heard about it. Also a monocultural phenomenon of a thing. What people like and the reason people like it has fractured so much. It's these large-scale, gatherings of, Simpsons put it, the nerds emerging from their basement and wearing colorful costumes have an incredible affirming effect on everybody, including me. They make the people who cover anime realize, oh, this is why I'm covering it. It is like a force. Make the young who, he's taking him to his first convention and he out of state and where he's from, he gets made fun of because he likes the cartoons from Japan, realized maybe he's cooler than he thought he was. Maybe it's a big deal that he likes, Gundam or any of those other things. I know this sounds sappy and, corny, and if you've been watching anime for all 5 seconds, you know that it's got this kind of emotional core to it that you don't appreciate until you've seen it firsthand. But if you don't get to experience that in person, it can feel really far away. And it can feel like it's only you and your friends, or even worse, only you sometimes. And that's hard. And the reason why I do these, why day-by-day write-ups and why I do these podcasts about Anime NYC is because I want to convince you to go to your first convention. It's like a physical manifestation of the fandom. You can go and you can, get in lines to panels or lines to buy something about your favorite series. You can take a picture with, Panty cosplayers, with a Freyrin cosplayer, with a Goku cosplayer. You can go meet your favorite voice actor. You can go do all of these things. But you have to go, and me giving you these records, these conventions, I hope convinces you. Yes, it's a lot more popular than it was, and yes, tickets were incredibly way cheaper when I was a young Odaling going to, my conventions or my first handful of events. But even if you only go for that first half a day, and you feel the amount of people there, and you see the breadth and depth of the medium and the people who appreciate it, it's worth it. And I thought third day, half day have nearly enough to do. But the people still showed up. People still got on a train, got in a car, got on a plane, whatever. and centralized in a place. And like I got about a, gotcha dust called 2 that is currently in hot water, from what I understand from another member of the press. I got on with a bunch of other people who, some of whom had no idea what this was, like I didn't, and some of whom were hardcore fans who brought it up on their phone to get a special reward code. And I talked to a couple of them. That's the deal that we want to make it. Especially in the age of like cell phones and social media, this is a real thing you can go do. This is a real place and time where everything becomes real. Where you can go cosplay, you can go be a weirdo nerd, you can go to an 18 plus panel and meet, a artist whose work you've followed forever. It's worth it. No matter what your bag is, it's worth it. So on that note, I'm gonna end it. If you like the show, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you like the YouTube videos, be sure to hit the notification bell so you know when you drop, although they drop every Thursday at 7 o'clock. And subscribe if you are following the channel. And if you want more out of me, you can go over to bento-box.ghost.o, my site, and you can see various writings, posts, thoughts about, there's a to my webtoon. There are links at the bottom of the homepage of every page to the formal page, to my Instagram, to my Blue Sky, where you can follow me in any number of places. So until next time, I have been Alex. This has been Bento Radio. I'll talk to you later.